every terror you've ever been told, destroying the innocent.
Such diabolic evil.
Listen, Isabella hasn't turned up again. I don't know what to do with that girl. This is the third time.
Inspector Sylvester, Countess Christina Como, the owner of our salon. But we've already met.
After my husband's death.
I remember. The car accident.
Stop that. You're going to ruin your makeup. Greta, you model it.
Oh, no, I don't think I should wear it.
Look, don't be so silly.
It carries bad luck, I'm sure.
But girls, someone's got to model it.
I'll wear the dress. Look at this. Isabella kept a diary.
You've got to believe me. I burned it. I tell you, I burned it. There was something about my private life I wanted to know about. You've got to believe me. I burned it.
Why don't you come home and sleep with me?
What? I live a few yards from here. And you want me to come out into the countryside?
Anyway, you'd be even more afraid at my house.
But aren't you afraid? Isabella and Peggy lived with you. Isabella's been killed, and Peggy...
Yes, I know. But I don't think anything would happen tonight. All the men are under arrest. And I'm sure the murderer is one of them.
Hi people, this is Gianni Lombardo Radice from Stage Fright, and you are listening to the Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back, and this is episode 200, and I should have got a sound effect of cheering and happy birthday, so we'll have to play a drum roll instead. Or even, hopefully not too many of these this episode. Yeah, so the same old shtick for 200 episodes. Can you believe it? Were you with us at the beginning, back in those the halcyon days of literally we were using tin cans and a length of string? And as you've noticed, the sound quality hasn't improved massively. In fact, today we've had an absolute mare with the sound quality. It's been all over the place. So hopefully this will turn out okay. And if it doesn't, then just forgive us because it's our birthday. And, well, not quite a birthday, but 200 episodes is a milestone rather than a millstone. Although sometimes it does feel like that. But, yeah, we are back with the film that Erik thought we'd covered so many times.
We have covered.
Well, we have covered.
We have.
You've never uncovered. What episode was it we covered this on, Erik?
36.
Right. Well, I don't know. We're going to look that up. But no, we haven't covered this.
That was Rush Week. Erik.
And unfortunately, as we have had a few hiccups today, unfortunately, we are missing a certain somebody.
Hi, y'all.
Hi, y'all, yes. Unfortunately, Nathan can't join us for our 200th episode, and we are so up against it time-wise that we can't reschedule this because we're such busy, popular people ahead of the holidays that we haven't got enough time slots. You haven't got a slot, Erik, to put it in, have you?
I have no available slots. No, they're all filled.
Yes, that's what I hear. So unfortunately, Nathan can't be with us, but hopefully he will give us his only a temporary absence. He will be back with us next time, but he'll give us his thoughts, I'm sure, on Blood and Black Lace at some point in the near future. Also, we will be hearing some friends of the show, some people who have been on the show, have recorded us some special little messages. So thank you one and all, and they will be peppered throughout this episode. So,
hey guys, this is Amanda Reyes, aka Amanda by Night. And I think all I really want to say is I can't believe you guys are 200 episodes in and Justin still hasn't asked me to marry him. So I guess congratulations. I'm just kidding. I'm so happy you guys are still here. You've given me so many years of pleasure, especially Justin. And happy anniversary.
Erik, do you have a sense of deja vu?
Complete, because we covered this.
Did you write it in your little diary?
No, but I mean, I have a recollection of watching the movie, watching the extras and taking notes for some reason, and I can only think it was for the show.
Well, if you can prove, and I said, is it the Mandela effect? Where some people, the Mandela effect, don't you, Erik?
No.
Well, I think in a nutshell, the Mandela effect is some people remember certain things about Nelson Mandela a news article or something, and it never happened, but a lot of people swear it did. And there's some theories that it's some kind of alternate universe or reality that has kind of slipped through. So maybe in another alternate reality, Erik, we did cover Blood and Black Lace. So, but anyway, Joseph, are you looking forward to covering this? We haven't covered this before, have we?
I don't recall, but I think Erik has the diary, so I'm going to break into his house and bitch slap him like 20 times.
And put my head against the stove.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So I'm I turned away to look at some notes, and if you heard those lot of bing bong, that was Argento daintily, even considering he's about 12 kilos. Is that heavy? I'm not sure, but he's quite a big cat, so he was trying to tiptoe across the keyboard then again. So I have to keep my wits about me. So I'm a bit like a fashion model trying to dodge a white-faced killer in an Italian fashion house.
That's exactly what it's like.
It is. Well, it is. Well, I've got to make the connections where I can. So I'm trying to multitask here. I've got a cup of tea. I can make sure he doesn't knock that over onto the keyboard. And he is circling. Anyway, before we get on to the feature presentation, let's have a little chat about what we've been watching in the last week or so. So, Erik, have you watched anything of note?
Okay, I saw two things. One's not a horror, but I think I'll just mention it. I think you've seen this one as well, Justin. It's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the new Tarantino movie, which I really liked. It was much lighter and much more comedic than I had anticipated, considering that the Manson family are at the sort of core of the story. I loved all the references to movies of yore, particularly European ones, spaghetti westerns, and there's crime movies as well. And there's great scenes where Leonardo DiCaprio is sort of digitally inserted into existing movies, which I thought was lots of fun. And I like the way, I know it's divided its audience about the ending of the film. I like the way he sort of plays with historical fact in much the same way he did in Inglourious Bastards. And I just think it works really well. And as I said, I was surprised at how kind of light the tone of the film was. And that really appealed to me. Now, it is quite long. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes. But I thought it was kind of justified because I thought it was terrific. I thought it was one of Tarantino's best. I mean, I wasn't mad on Django Unchained. I didn't see Hateful Eight yet because the look of it, and it was 3 hours long as well, it didn't look like it was going to appeal to me. But this one, big thumbs up. I really liked it.
Cool. Okay. Joseph, you caught up with it yet?
I haven't seen a Tarantino film since Kill Bill Volume 2, so I'm really behind the curve on the Tarantino bandwagon, but I do want to see it. So
you saw Death Proof, didn't you?
Oh yeah, was that after Kill Bill?
It was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, then that's the last film I saw.
Okay, yeah, that's 2007, so that's 12 years. Yeah.
Okay, I'm playing fist. I nearly said I'm fisting Argento. I'm not. I'm trying to push him away from the keyboard with my fist.
That's going at the end of the episode.
Well, I'm sure it's yes, maybe, but yeah, I'm sort of
staying in the episode.
I'm gently trying to stop him. I'm just going to have to put him on the floor.
This is Bill Ackerman from the Supporting Characters podcast and the Alice Sweet Alice episode, and you're listening to the big number 200th episode of The Hysteria Continues. It's a classic.
Back to Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was looking forward to catching it again. I think there was talk about it being released to Netflix as a 2-part movie with extra footage. Because it was one of those films that it just was so lushly put together, and the recreation of 1969 Hollywood was so artfully done. And also, I think I did see The Hateful Eight, and I did see the Django Unchained, but I've never been a fan of westerns. So although I quite enjoyed those movies, whereas this was really up my street, kind of Manson and Hollywood and all of that kind of stuff was really kind of ticked a lot of boxes. So I really liked it. So cool beans. So anything else, Erik?
Yes, the other one I watched, which had a similar running time, was It Chapter 2. Now I hated the Tommy Lee Wallace miniseries that came out in 1990,
but I quite enjoyed the first movie that came out 2 years ago, or was it last year or 2 years ago, whichever one. This one, though, it's absurdly long at just under 3 hours, and it doesn't need to be at all. I haven't read the source novel, so I don't know if it's just slavishly following the novel or not, or if that's why it needs to be that duration. But the film for me is very episodic. and the narrative feels quite disjointed and fragmented, and it feels like a film that could be 90 minutes, but it feels to me like a series of set pieces, really. And there's lots of interesting and fun moments in the film, and lots of quite scary sequences, and the effects are great in that. And the other thing that they do in this is that the tone shifts from being deadly serious to being quite comedic in the blink of an eye. So you'll have people in really perilous situations who'll be quipping like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a 1980s action movie, and it just doesn't quite gel, that tone. So it's not a great movie. It's a movie of decent moments, but as a 3-hour experience, I found it a bit of a chore, to be honest. But it was one I felt I wanted to, because I enjoyed the first one to a degree. I thought that I was expecting more of the second one. I don't remember the first one being 3 hours though. It was not that long, was it?
I think it was kind of. I think they were. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I'm just off the top of my head. It probably felt that long, but I think we discussed it before with the miniseries. It was. I like the miniseries, but it and like the book to some degree. It's the first half with the kids is more fun, and the stuff with the adults. So it always ran that risk. To be honest, I haven't seen part 2. Yet, so I will reserve judgment. But I liked number 1 well enough, but I don't know. I think sometimes I know it was a massive success. I mean, both of them are huge, and I know Dr. Sleep, the Shining sequel, hasn't done nearly as well as the box office. So Stephen King's very kind of hit or miss, isn't he, with audiences, I guess. But it kind of feels like it kind of borrowed a little bit too much from the Conjuring universe of that. It seems to have a lot of, and the first one seemed to have a lot of the kind of James Wan influence over it, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think it's at this stage with something like the, I think it's the latest Annabelle movie or whatever. It was just kind of ringing new ideas out for the franchise. It's very much a case of diminishing returns. So I don't know. I need to be. And I'm looking forward to watching the second one, but with some slight trepidation. I liked some of the actors and actresses in it, but I don't know. What about you, Joseph? If I recall correctly, I don't think you had much interest in.
I did not like Eric. I didn't really care for the miniseries, and to be honest, a lot of people find clowns scary. I just find them annoying, so I'm just not interested.
Now, I can't really remember the miniseries all that well, apart from the fact that I know I didn't like it. I've seen it twice, but the second in it, chapter 2, there's this kind of a science fiction twist to the story. As it progresses, is that the way it was in the novel, or have they added that in?
I remember reading the novel and loving it, but that was probably back fairly soon after it came out. So I don't remember. I know there were some bits in the novel which seemed frankly unfilmable, not because they're sci-fi, but because they were so sort of graphic and sort of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily get away with. So, which they kind of shied away from, I think, in the adaptation anyway. So I don't know. It does feel like sometimes it's like, why, if you can make a good film in 90 minutes, why not make a good film in 90 minutes? I'm not massively opposed to longer films, but there needs to be a reason for it. And I think especially with horror movies, it can be quite difficult to keep a momentum. If you're doing a slow, methodical French art house film, then you can go for 3 or 4 hours of just someone staring at a coffee. But if you're doing a horror movie, it's much more difficult to keep that suspense, that level up. And sometimes I think filmmakers could do with cutting the fat a little bit with films. It's almost, I wouldn't say it should be a law to keep films at 90 minutes, but you need a good justification to take them over that, I think. So,
well, like you said, it really just depends on the genre. I mean, horror really lends itself to that 90-minute roller coaster feel.
Well, absolutely, because otherwise, it's interesting when you're talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, although that wasn't obviously not a horror movie, but I think because it was full full of little kind of typically Tarantino-esque kind of little moments or little almost skits throughout it. It was kind of it's almost sketches, isn't it, of not comedy sketches, but sketches of like a bit of drama. It doesn't feel like it kind of works in that kind of context. But I think for a comedy, you don't get 2.5, 3 hour comedies, do you? Because
no, and again, like horror films, that's why they're critic proof, because they are essentially roller coasters, and the good ones know when to stop the train on the tracks.
Exactly. So, okay, well, I shall give my feedback when I've watched it Chapter 2. So, but thank you, Erik. Anything else?
No, that was it, because both of them were quite long, so we were misses. That they took up most of the week.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you, Joseph. How about you?
Well, the only thing I've watched this week, other than our main feature, is The Dead Center. I know you talked about this, Justin. This stars Shane Carruth, he of Primer and Upstream Color Cred, and it's about a body in the morgue coming back to life, and that's not really a spoiler, as that happens in the first 30 seconds of the film. But what follows is, I'd say, much too rich and rewarding to spoil any further. So I'll just say that essentially we follow two doctors who are drawn to said dead body in more ways than one, until both of the stories kind of intersect at the end. That's all I can really tell without giving away too much of the good stuff. But man, I found this movie very well acted, and it was beautifully and stylistically shot. The sound design really pops as well. And ultimately, I think the film is just unequivocally creepy as hell. And Shane Carruth, to me, is seriously one of the more interesting individuals in the indie scene. And although he didn't write or direct The Dead Center, he did produce it and he stars in it. And he actually turns in a really layered performance that I'd say far outshines his work in front of the camera and Primer and Upstream Color. I always found him to be a better director and writer than he is an actor, but he's really good here. This is a slow burn kind of film, and a slow burn at its finest, I would say. I like that you're never really sure where it's going, and then right at the end, you think they're going to pull a cliche on you. And the whole time I'm sitting here thinking, okay, the buildup has been so good, please don't do this. And thankfully, they opt out of doing that. The Dead Center, I wouldn't call it a popcorn kind of entertaining, but it's really easily the best movie I've seen this year, and probably my personal favorite since The Ritual. Just undeniably creepy, excellent sound work, excellent visuals, excellent acting. I loved this film.
Excellent. Okay, have you seen it yet, Erik?
No, not yet. No.
Okay. Because I remember that when I discussed it recently, I really liked it. It reminded me, as I said at the time, of a kind of like a 70s style horror movie in the vein of something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, although it's not a sci-fi movie, but it had that kind of slightly, those 70s satanic movie, something. It's not a satanic movie, it's not arguably not a satanic movie, and it's arguably not a sci-fi movie, but it has that that kind of strange science thing going on. It's not a sci-fi movie either. It's a little bit difficult to pin down, but it's definitely like a horror movie. It's got slightly Cronenberg-esque, but again, it's not a Cronenberg movie. So yeah, it's quite unique.
I like that the central character played by Carruth, I like that he's this kind of sensible doctor, and he actually cares about the patients he's attending to. It's like in most of these, for example, the Saw films, and you get the first Saw film, and the main character is a doctor, but he's just so cold and distant. And in a lot of these films, when they cast someone as a doctor character, I find them just kind of standoffish. I like that, the lead guy was relatable in a way. And not to spoil too much, because I know Erik hasn't seen it, but how about the faces on the quote unquote victims? Oh my God, that freaked me out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it is. It's a good little movie. So do check it out if you can. Mm-hmm. So
I recommend it, Erik. I definitely think you would like this.
Oh no, I will. Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. And I think it was put out by Arrow in the UK. So is there anything else, Joseph?
No, that's it.
Hey, this is David C. Millay, a.k.a. BTK, a.k.a. fucking Dave from the shit show that I call Everybody Dies. I just wanted to congratulate you guys on 200 episodes. I'm proud of you. I love you. You're sexy. I'm so hot right now. Good Lord. Here's to another 200, and then maybe you guys should stop because, good God. All right. Love you guys. Congrats. Bye.
Okay, well, just a couple of things. I think a film that took me by surprise was an anthology. And I do like anthologies, and this was a film I'd never heard of before, which came out last year. Was The Field Guide to Evil, and it's an anthology based on folklore. So stories of folklore stories from around the world. One's from the United States, one's from Turkey, one's from Russia, one's from Poland, and so they're kind of little vignettes, little stories. That taken from kind of folklore, I can guess, but all basis within horror. So it's and the selling point of it is it's kind of like where horror came from, the idea of things. So it's the there's a story in Poland where a man is told if he eats the hearts of 3 dead people, he will get ultimate knowledge. So all these kind of things that have gone down through folklore. And there's another one, like a creepy one, set in Turkey with a pregnant mother who's caring for a disabled old woman who starts suspecting this old woman has been taken over by the spirit of a goat and kind of wants to kill her. And it's just those kind of stories, and some of them really quirky. There's one done like a fairy tale, one of 2 brothers vying for the attention of a princess. Some of them are very dark. Some of them reminded me, there was one set in, I think it was Crete or somewhere, or Greece, where this kind of goblin devil creature only comes out when everyone's drunk for a certain holiday. And it reminded me a bit of the film like Mandy, with that kind of slight head fuckery stuff going on. So it's a good little movie, and it's it's quite long. It's about 2 hours, and there's about 7 or 8 tales in there. So they never outstay their welcome. So if you've got a taste of something a little bit different, and the American one is just completely bonkers. It's have either of you guys heard of that?
Can't say that I have.
Well, there was that. The other one I saw last night actually was a film. I think it's called Freaks. Was it called Freaks? Yes, it was. It was. I won't give too much away of it, but it's not the 1932, whenever it was, famous kind of film set in a circus. But this one has a young girl of about 6 or 7, maybe a little bit older, who's been kept in a house by her father, who won't let her go outside, and he kind of boards up all the windows and everything, and tells her that she can't go outside because she'd be in danger. The outside world is really dangerous. And she becomes more and more curious about what's actually outside. So, and she keeps on having these visions or these flashes of seeing what looks like her mother has been trapped somewhere in the house. So it keeps you guessing to start off with what it is, whether or not the father, played by Emil Hirsch, is keeping her against her will, whether or not he is genuinely trying to protect her, or there's something else going on. And of course there's something else going on, but I won't say what it is, because the film doesn't tip its hat to what genre necessarily it is, or what is actually going on, until about the 20 or 30 minute mark, and then things gradually become a little bit clearer. I kind of liked it. It's not fantastic, but it's a kind of neat little premise, which you may not see the twists coming. So that's either of you guys. You said you hadn't heard of that, didn't you?
What was it called again?
Freaks.
Freaks. No. It's not the old Freaks.
No, not the old Freaks. It's the new Freaks, so as it were. And the only other film I saw, and I don't know, I may have mentioned in the last podcast, was Mary. Did I mention Mary? It's the one about set on the boat. God, I think it's a cat snoring. Hold on.
This is Gore Blimey from the Jason X episode, and you're listening to the 200th episode of the Hysteria Continues. I just wanted to say thanks to the four of you for keeping us listeners so well entertained all that time. You've always got great chemistry together, you're always funny, and you're always interesting. And when you shower us with your wit and wisdom, it's not just any old shower. It's golden.
Well, Mary was... I saw the trailer for this and it looked quite intriguing. It's actually got Gary Oldman and Emily Mortimer in it, and it's surprisingly mainstream, I kind of guess. Gary Oldman plays a kind of not a sailor, but someone who takes people out on pleasure cruises on someone else's boat, and then he buys this kind of Mary Celeste style old yacht. And he does it up with a view of paying customers out on trips. And he goes out with his wife and his two daughters and two crewmates. And essentially what it is, it's a haunted house picture on a boat. So the boat is cursed or haunted. And it basically they find out why it's got this kind of Mary Celeste style history to it, which essentially means that everyone on board goes missing every 20 years or so. It's okay. It's not amazing, but it's got some quite good pieces in it. So is that one you guys have heard of before?
No.
Well, that's one to look out for. So that is our top three for the 200th episode. So,
top three,
not top three. What am I thinking? Oh,
recently seen.
You can edit that bit out, Joseph, or leave it in, because we're recording a little bit later than normal, so I think we're all a bit frazzled.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've had a terrible day. Terrible.
Well, I accidentally heard a Toya song earlier. It's just the worst. So
how rude. That should cheer you up and make you happy.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, here is the trailer for our feature presentation, and I'll bring you back in after this.
A house of high fashion, a dazzling whirl of elegance, of exotic, extravagant beauties. An adventurous journey into the devastating allure of the most sophisticated women and their intimate secrets.
Suddenly, these lace curtains ignite a drama that will lacerate your emotions. Blood and black lace. Who is this shrouded, sadistic, sordid fiend who maims and murders? Why this bloodthirsty orgy, this holocaust of lives? Blood and black lace in bleeding color. A shattering, shivering, shocking experience.
Isabella, a young model, is murdered by a mysterious masked figure at a boarding house run by Max Morlan and his lover, Countess Christina Como. When Isabella's boyfriend is suspected of the killing, her diary, which apparently has some incriminating evidence linking her to the killer, disappears. The masked killer begins killing off all the models in and around the house to find the diary. Now, that was the slightly, as I'm now reading it back, slightly incorrect synopsis I found on IMDb. It's not the young models not killing models around a boarding house. It's actually a fashion house where the models work. And of course, what we're talking about here is Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace, which we haven't covered before, Eric. I hated to break it to you.
We have.
But
or maybe we covered a concert by Black Lace. That's what I'm thinking.
Maybe.
Of.
Well, we
did.
Yes, talking of horrors. Now, Blood and Black Lace is a seminal film. It's as important to the slasher movie as Psycho was. In fact, actually, they kind of didn't come out exactly the same year, I don't think. When did Psycho come out? Was it 60? Was it 60?
1960.
It was 60. So it was, and this was 64, wasn't it? So the Psycho predated this, but Blood and Black Lace, in its own way, is as brutal, if not more brutal, or has more sustained brutality and beauty, I kind of guess, as Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. It is a film that, when I was looking into the background for this, I didn't realise. I knew it was an important important film, and it's a film I've seen many times. And of course, many of you, I'm sure, will have picked up the Arrow Blu-ray for this, which is revelatory in its opulence. I mean, the film looks absolutely beautiful. And I think I would have seen it, I'm sure, way back in the midst of time on VHS, probably not in its best presentation. But Mario Bava is an absolute master of colour, of art, of, he's a playfulness. He is a sort of maestro of violence. I mean, Mario Bava does have it all. Now, what was interesting to me is that the film, from what I was reading, was not actually a successful film in Italy. In fact, it made a third of the money of his Erik the Conqueror movie, which I've not seen. I've got no particular interest in seeing a film about Vikings, particularly.
Hey,
well, what?
It's about me.
Well, maybe, but yes, you made more money than this film, Erik. But what the film did do was it was ahead of its time, and it influenced a whole roster of young directors, including, of course, Dario Argento, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more. But of course, it also influenced people like John Carpenter, and so you had this, perhaps for the first time, this faceless killer going around killing people in this kind of body count. It's perhaps, arguably the first body count movie. And again, it's not like all of these films, and we talked about them in the context of like Halloween and these films, they're not made in a vacuum. They don't just suddenly appear. They come from years of influences. And this film did as well. It's not the first giallo. Gialli were being made way back from the 1930s, and the same way as Dario Argento's Bird of a Crystal Plumage, it kind of reshaped the giallo into something that took it forward, which was this kind of slightly more sexed up, fetishistic, violent, very stylish type of filmmaking. The film is a visual treat from beginning to end. It's funny, the soundtrack is almost quite jaunty, and it's got this kind of sexy, smoky jazz soundtrack for some of it. And you've got the juxtaposition of this violence, very actually protracted scenes of violence. I mean, they're not as gory as even, say, Mario Bava's own A Bay of Blood, which sort of came 7 or 8 years later, or what we know of slasher movies today. But actually, the length of violence that you see in this, in so much of mostly, almost totally women, the victims being roughed up by the killer, or as we'll find out, killers. Spoiler alert. Is actually still quite jarring today. You don't tend to see films, horror movies or slasher movies, where characters are beaten up essentially before they're murdered, but you certainly do in this film. But it's framed in this kind of playful whodunit, which is so deftly made that although some bits are quite disturbing, you can't help but sort of smile at what Mario Bava's there's a kind of a sense of playfulness, mischievousness, and of course it's just sort of kind of sumptuous to look at. The colours just jump right out at you. I mean, there's again, you can see the kind of like a prism of all the influences of this film throughout, from Dario Argento with Hysteria, and those kind of oversaturated colours that use such great effect were kind of used perhaps arguably first here. The white-faced killer is you have somebody in a fedora and this raincoat and the black leather gloves, which of course became ubiquitous and was used so thoroughly and so repetitively throughout the whole giallo cycle. This killer or killers with this white bandage around their face, which essentially takes away all personality. And it's something that it seemed to inspire John Carpenter for Halloween, where you have these kind of masked killers who everything is hidden behind their mask, so their identity is hidden. And so although Halloween and Friday the 13th and those kind of films, which the films of Mario Bava, I'd argue, say Blood and Black Lace influenced Halloween, and obviously although the makers deny it, the Blood and Bay of Blood influenced the Friday the 13th movie, especially Friday the 13th Part 2. Yeah, it's such a beautiful film, and it's amazing actually looking into the background about how little money Mario Bava had and how someone can make a film look this good on such a small budget is quite amazing. So I've got lots more to say about this, but Joseph, what are your thoughts on Blood and Black Lace?
Bava doesn't waste a single frame in Blood and Black Lace, does he? I mean, because every scene is set up with this extravagant color palette, but it's kind of done in like single tones, which is kind of unlike most gialli that revel in kind of multiple colors. But here, each murder scene seems to have its own singularity. Like the furnace scene is red, and the claw in the face is kind of muted in grays. And then you have the drowning in the basin, and that has that aqua green hue to it. Even the killer, as Justin says, I mean, he has this like blank white stocking for a face, and he's surrounded by the black clothing that he wears. I mean, and that, of course, brings to mind, obviously, the specter of death long before these trench coat wearing villains became such normality in these films. I mean, I could go on. It's such a beautiful, striking film to watch. Plot-wise, I mean, this stuff was probably fresh and inventive for its time, but familiarity over the years with this genre kind of makes it seem like old hat, but that's not really a strike against the movie per se as it is, I guess, against time. Some of the characterization is, let's face it, absolutely flawed and stupid. I mean, that sinful diary shtick is such a silly MacGuffin. I mean, in this day and age, we don't really go around murdering those who wallow in depravity. We just elect them president. And I think the fact that you have Cameron Mitchell as the front runner, it really sort of gives away the denouement. But I mean, as far as cinematic beauty is concerned, very few films stand above what Bava's achieved here. It's not my favorite of his films. And as I've said before in the past, I kind of prefer his son's output more, because I think he's not as concerned with set design so much as he's concerned with just, delivering a deliriously entertaining bottom line. But, I mean, that's another argument for another show. I mean, this is the Elder Bava's hour. So I'll just conclude with saying that, yeah, Blood and Black Lace is a near masterpiece. I love it. It's not my favorite of Mario's films. I think that's still a Bay of Blood for me, but this is damn close.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Joseph. Erik, what are your thoughts on the movie we haven't covered before?
Well, my thoughts are that I too have a deliriously entertaining bottom, as Joseph was talking about there. So I went into the alternate universe that I covered this in before on a podcast and just got my notes from there, so it didn't involve too much work this week. So if you're from my alternate universe, and you've heard this before, apologies. I think this is a classic as well. I would prefer it to Bay of Blood myself. When it comes to films that are what we might call groundbreaking or forerunners, a lot of the times I find those films can be a bit tame or lackluster in retrospect, as important as they are. But it's not the case with Blood and Black Lace, because I do love this film and it delivers in spades, and it's quite edgy, I suppose, for its time. For 1964, it does pack in a bit of nastiness into its 90-minute running time. I love the mystery and the plot that are really quite engrossing, and the quest everyone's on to get the diary. I don't mind that MacGuffin. I think it's kind of fun. I love that scene where the diary is sitting in the handbag and it's on the table in the fashion house and everyone has their eyes on it. It's just brilliantly handled, and it leaves you sort of going, I wonder what's in this diary. It really draws you in. And then, some of the murder set pieces are, if had they been made 20 years later, they would have been super gory with Tom Savini special effects. But as they are, they're quite cruel. The face burned on the stove, and the death by that 3-pronged spiky thing. I don't even know what it is. It's something to do with a suit of armor, but it looks vicious, whatever it is. As you were saying, I love the killer's get-up, that sort of blank bit of white fabric that sort of not only disguises the killer's face, but also their gender. So you really don't have any clues to who the killer is till the end. And it is quite eerie to look at. And as you say, it probably was a big influence on the Michael Myers mask, which is similarly kind of pasty and blank as well. And then the use of color. I mean, I was looking at some of the extras on the Blu-ray, and I think Bava was was warned not to shoot a thriller in color because it just wouldn't work. Traditionally they were shot in black and white, and he goes overboard.
Eric, have you seen the black and white version of A Bay of Blood? I mean, Blood and Black Lace.
There is no black and white version of Blood and Black Lace.
No, someone made a composite. You can get it off.
I thought you were trying to taunt me. Sorry.
No. Someone actually made a composite in black and white. I don't know why they would want to mute the colors, but it's actually kind of interesting to watch it in black and white.
Yeah, I'm team color, I think, for me. And I love the outlandish and totally unnaturalistic lighting that he uses in this, in the same way that Argento did in Suspiria in particular. I just love the sort of garish colors, the purples, the reds, all that type of stuff, because I much prefer that to that trend we had in the noughties where people were in the 90s as well, where people were using that, quote, muted palette with, films like the Saw franchise, or, even outside of horror, something like The Matrix, which was predominantly this sort of murky green color. I hate that. I really do. I love my film. I don't think it's impossible for a film to be scary and colorful at the same time. My favorite moments in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre are the ones in broad daylight. I think they're so brilliantly done. So I don't see a problem with color and horror for me. And I love when it's done in this style, like, your retinas will be burned looking at that Blu-ray print that Arrow brought out of Blood and Black Lace, because it's so colorful and just wonderful to look at. It's a treat for the eyes for me. The one problem I would have with a film like this, and it happens with maybe a number of Jali, is that I find it sometimes difficult to differentiate between the different characters. Unless they're kind of the front and center character, I sometimes can't tell who's who. And when it's set in a fashion house, basically you've got all these women who look like models who are all dressing in the same sort of, fashionable frocks, for want of a better word. There's probably a more contemporary term than frock, but I can't think of it. So the characters all begin to merge into one for me in this, and I can never tell, okay, which one is Peggy and which one is whatever, Christina. So that's a very minor problem for me, because sometimes in these films, not in this one, but in other Jali, sometimes when the killer is revealed, I'm like, okay, which one is that again? In this one, I did know who they were. There's a spoiler for you, because we do have two murderers in this, which is the same type of thing that Wes Craven does in Scream. So for me, a great movie. I'm not, as you know, when it comes to horror pre-1970, I sometimes can struggle with them because they might seem a bit old-fashioned and antiquated. But Blood and Black Lace is quite modern, certainly ahead of its time in terms of what he puts on the screen. So for that reason, I do love it. And it's models being chased by a killer. What more could you want? So yeah, big thumbs up for me. When it comes to Giallos, though, like Joseph, I would probably prefer some of Bava's other films more, particularly something like Lisa and the Devil is one I have a strange affinity for, because it's the very first Bava film I saw, and I love Shock and I love Rabid Dogs. So they're all from the 1970s, so that probably says it all. But for me with Giallo, my first port of call would be something like Deep Red, or if I want something a little more trashy, Eyeball. But Blood and Black Lace is up there, though.
That was a really good review, Eric, though I think I liked it better the first time I heard it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, it kind of it was interesting, wasn't it? Because the film, the films that followed, the Jali that followed, were more along the lines of those maybe Umberto Lenzi, Orgasmo, the Carol Baker, Jean Sorel style movies that kind of came out in the mid to late 60s, which there was a certain cynicism, I think, in Italy at the time, where they saw the kind of the jet set killing each other. And I think I did read somewhere, and I think it was, or I listened to a podcast, and I think it may have been I'm trying to remember where I heard it from, but it was sort of saying that the audience for many of these movies were kind of working class audiences who went to see the movies, and they actually revelled in the fact that they were showing all these kind of rich bitches and sort of callow playboys and stuff. And while they were fascinated by their jet set lifestyles, they actually really enjoyed watching them do horrible things to each other. which kind of makes some kind of sense, because I think, as I mentioned before when I was reading up on this, it wasn't a success, but it wasn't until Dario Argento's A Bird with Crystal Plumage that the film became, the giallo became, for want of a better sort of name or the term, respectable, in so much that of course the giallo, as we talked about before, were based very much on the pulpy crime thrillers that played up the sex and the violence, so they weren't seen as high art by any stretch. And so I don't know where this film fell into that canon, but I imagine that when you look at a lot of Mario Bava's other sort of output from around this time, and we've got Black Sunday and Black Sabbath and those kind of movies. Again, they're all kind of playing off slightly pulpy horror cliches or genres. And nothing wrong with that at all, of course. And I think it was that hook, or the spiked glove, was kind of playback to Barbara Steele having that mask hammered onto her face so memorably in Black Sunday, wasn't it?
You got to wonder if that claw glove thing he wears, you got to wonder if that inspired Freddy Krueger or even the killer from Girls Night Out.
Yes. Well,
I mean,
yes.
It's
no, I'm not laughing. I'm just kind of saying it's kind of, I think Nightmare on Elm Street, it's funny, it's looking at all the things, it's whether or not the killer in Girls Night Out inspired Nightmare on Elm Street is also a talking point as well. I don't know, but I think it's what Erik was saying and mentioning about Scream as well, the two killers. So, I mean, how many influences has this film had is, it might be a stretch on some of them, I don't know, but it certainly had a massive impact, hasn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes it's really fun to just revel in something like 1964, this fashion house. I mean, inside this house, everyone smokes, so that place must stink to high heaven.
Yeah, it's and all those posh clothes, they'd be stinking of cigarettes.
Yeah. I know, it's just awful, and it's just so funny that that was just the norm de rigueur back then. And now it's like you get admonished for even thinking about smoking. I mean, I'm not a smoker. As it should be. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a smoker or anything, but I mean, if you want to smoke, let people smoke. I mean,
yeah, Justin,
I don't smoke.
So
I don't smoke.
Yeah, Justin, you're 40 a day habit.
Erik, I haven't smoked anything for about 4 or 5 years now.
That night I met you in Manchester, you were out every 5 minutes having a cigarette.
That's only because I could get the gossip with your friends and then tell them your nickname is Inga.
That was 4 or 5 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was.
So there you go. He's telling the truth.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question for you guys. Do you think the sign was ever rehung up? Because I mean, they talk about it falling like 10 times in the opening scene.
After
you want me to hang
credits.
the sign back? Yeah.
That's the important thing. Yes, everyone was murdered, but what about the sign?
Yeah. I know. Somebody's going to hang the sign back up. Speaking of which, I love that opening scene with the girl walking through the woods. And Bava does sort of this Scorsese before Scorsese. And I know Bava influenced Scorsese because Scorsese has mentioned that before. But he does that kind of that tracking shot. But rather than follow somebody, they're kind of following the tracking shot. So it's like a reverse of what you're normally seeing in these movies. And it's just so well shot, and then it just perfectly caps off with that really brutal murder. And in 1964, that had to have offended a few people.
Well, I know it offended I can't remember the name of the actress off the top of my head, but the older woman that's in this,
yes,
who is in the police identity. She goes and tries to identify the killer. And apparently she didn't like the movie and didn't like talking about it because she thought it was too violent. So it was kind of interesting that why it was so violent. I don't know why Bava made it such a violent movie. I know it was made for the American market, so the people behind it, the money people, thought that the money was in America. So it was made with an eye for the American market. So maybe I kind of guess in the wake of Psycho and the idea of actually a kind of extreme violence within the terms of that time. Because I think it's interesting to think, I mean, we think of Psycho as being this amazing black and white movie, which of course it is, but Hitchcock made Psycho in black and white because he wanted to make a quick, cheapy film on TV sets, and it was cheaper to make a black and white movie at that time. And I think if he had the money or a major studio backing, he probably would have filmed it in colour. And I think Psycho arguably would have worked just as well in colour. But there's also something about Italian movies and Italian filmmakers that there is a Baroque sense of drama with Italian and some European films, and like Spanish films, for instance, but especially Italian films, where that sense of drama and the garishness, I kind of guess. And also, I think he was influenced by the Grand Guignol, sort of the French theatre of the absurd, which was so that all those the session with the model has a face burnt off on the thing. I mean, that's very much you could see that because if you don't, I'm sure if you know what the Grand Guignol is, but if you don't, it was a theatre in Paris in the turn of the 20th century, 1890s or something, through to 1920s or 1930s, where they would create these plays which were basically just purely little skits for showing mental illness and torture and murder, and so they would disembowel people, gouge eyes out, burn them alive, things like that. But obviously for make-believe, so it all done. But these kind of horror shows which are done to scandalise audiences. So this film very much feels like it's a continuation of that, and these extreme ways of killing people, which, you know, we're not talking extreme ways like Tom Savini, as you mentioned, Erik, but they're ways which would, at the time, scandalised audiences. And apparently, from what I've read on this, it was the American audiences that were scandalised by this movie more so than European ones. Although whether or not this film, I'm not sure. I didn't look it up whether this film got released in the UK, but I imagine it would have been, if it did, it would have been cut. I can't imagine a film this violent would have passed UK censors back in 1964.
You were talking about Psycho. Now, one of the things I heard, and this does relate to Blood and Black Lace. Now, one of the things I heard is that Hitchcock essentially shot the film in black and white as another means to get around censors, you know, not wanting to see the red blood go down the drain. So he thought if it's in black and white, you know, they can't complain. And that's just what I heard. So I'm wondering how much the norms had changed between 1960 and 1964, because you get the jump from Psycho in black and white and you got just a little bit of blood going down in the drain. And then you jump from that to this. And I mean, let's face it, for 1964, this is pretty graphic stuff. I mean, I'm wondering if, was it all, Justin, you probably know more about this than I would, but the Italian films, you know, that possibly predated Psycho, I mean, were they just as graphic? I mean, or is this just kind of a changing of the norms, as it were?
Well, he did The Girl Who Knew Too Much, didn't he, with John Saxon. It kind of predates this. And I don't think... I don't know. I don't think they were... I think they increased the violence. I think what seemed to happen, looking back, is there was this constant kind of symbiotic relationship between the different countries, and you have these cycles of movies which had influenced them. And of course, the Italians, as we know, have always been very adept at taking on popular film genres and hit films and making their own versions of them. Of course, we saw that to a massive effect in the 70s with all the Jaws rip-offs, and of course the 80s with the George A. Romero rip-offs from Fulci, and but they've taken them off in their own direction. So I think, maybe someone could set me right on this, but I think this was a kind of a benchmark in violent cinema for Italy. Although, say something like Black Sunday, when you do have Barbara Steele having that mask hammered onto her face, was pretty graphic for the time, from a violence point of view. But I think at this time you also had films. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't it Witchfinder General kind of coming out around this time, or maybe a little bit later? So I think there was certain pushing the envelope as far as cinematic violence went as the 60s progressed. Certainly, probably much more than you would have seen in 1950s movies or certainly 1940s movies.
I love the evolution of violence in cinema, or more to the point, gore, because there was a Three Stooges short in the late 1940s where they showed a tiny trickle of blood at the corner of someone's mouth, and they got in so much trouble for letting that get past their censors. And it's just amazing to me how something like that could really rile people up, and then you just skip ahead a few years and it just gets more and more graphic. I've always found that just fascinating with the whole, the evolution of it all. It fascinates me.
Well, it is fascinating. I mean, I think from what I read, the Grand Guignol was finished after the war because is that people would see, violence in movies were becoming more pronounced, so people didn't need to go and see approximations of it on stage. So, but the other thing about this film, which I thought was interesting, was again, it was influenced very much by the Krimi, and I know we covered a couple of Krimi, much to your non-amusement, or certainly I think Nathan's non-amusement. And of course, if you didn't hear that episode, the Krimi were sort of violent horror thrillers, whodunits or whatever, based on Edgar Wallace and other British writers that were very popular in Germany, and they had very outlandish killers who would go around, dressed as executioners or as wearing frog masks and all sorts of different things. Or the Hunchback of Soho, which I think was one of the ones, and there was one of the Gorilla of Soho as well.
What was the one we covered? There was the Phantom of Soho.
Phantom of Soho.
Yeah, because I wasn't. I mean, I don't think I hated it as much as Nathan really didn't like it, but I just found it a bit drab. Whereas Blood and Black Lace I'm completely on board with. Yeah, but Tim Lucas actually describes, or he pronounces Krimi as creamy on the commentary track for Blood and Black Lace, which kept making me think of a yogurt.
Yeah, I don't hate Phantom of Soho. I actually appreciate it a lot for what it does. I just, like you, Eric, I just found it it didn't really entertain me all that much.
No.
I think it's it was interesting that I think the violence in this was a reaction to the violence in the crimies becoming more pronounced, because there's a film which I covered in my book, plug there, called Zimmer 13, which I think it translates as Room 13, which has a very graphic sequence where I think it's a model has her throat slit behind a thing where people used to get dressed behind a kind of a screen, and her arterial sprays out everywhere. So there was definitely not an interest, but certainly there was this burgeoning kind of appreciation or sort of burgeoning violence in movies. And it also, I think the film was made for an American audience, but it was also made with one eye on the German audience and the Krimi being so popular, because it has this something that becomes a trope in the giallo movies, was like the ineffectual police investigation, which here was by, I think it was the policeman. I think his name is Thomas Reiner, which I think is a German film actor who plays the inspector in this movie. And ultimately, the police investigations lead nowhere, do they? There's nothing. They don't actually. So they don't solve anything. And so the ineffectual police, which again I imagine probably if you looked into the history of Italy, it probably says a lot of their Italian audiences kind of disregard for authority. That many gialli in the future you had. That's why I think a lot of those later gialli you had this kind of investigation by someone like David Hemmings in Deep Red the guy in Bird with a Crystal Plumage, his name escapes me, but is that they become the investigators without the need of police. So ultimately, although it has an ending which was, well, the ending, essentially it's Cameron Mitchell, which, as you tip the hat to, Joseph, is not a great surprise, because Cameron Mitchell was probably the biggest star in this movie at the time, and he had been.
Yeah, and he made a good lucrative career out of playing the creep. So
Exactly, and it turns out that him and Eva Bartok, who is the madam of the house, as it were, the Hungarian actress, are kind of in cahoots, and they're kind of there's a couple who are secretly married, and that they're killing off the models, which seems counterintuitive, really, in some ways, if you're running a model agency by killing the talent. But there you go. But what it did have, it had the ending where. Although this seems quite a modern movie in some ways for 1964, it still ends in a way that you have they're punished in so much, although not by the police. The Eva Bartok is kind of essentially killed, or not killed, but she's seriously injured by falling from a what they call it, a shell, falling from a window ledge, because Cameron Mitchell's character has told her to try and escape. And she's gone out and she's fallen, and the implication is that he's done that on purpose because she was going to fall to her death. But she comes back, and as she dies, she shoots him dead. So they both die. So in some ways, there was this kind of this thing with these movies that at this time it was almost that badness or villainy could not be rewarded. And it's funny, I've watched a film last night, and called Purple Noon with Alain Delon. It's based on the Patricia Highsmith's book, The Talented Miss Ripley, which was remade with Damon, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but and Jude Law in the late 90s, I think it was, and about
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, that's of course it's Matt Damon. But in the original book, he gets Mr. Tom Ripley gets away, even though he's murdered two people in the book. But in the film, the 1960 version, he is arrested, but you're led to believe he's going to be arrested by the police. He gets found out because at the time. And Patricia Highsmith said at the time that she was disappointed in the film because it didn't have a conviction of her book to actually let the villain go free. And in the same way as Blood and Black Lace, the killer is they don't go free. Whereas in something like Bay of Blood, then you have an ending where actually the killers don't go free, but you have an ironic ending where, well, I suppose actually they don't go free in those movies, do they? It's not until a bit later that I'm trying to think if any of the killers got away in his movies. I can't remember how Hatchet for the Honeymoon ended.
I don't know. He doesn't get away with it in that one either.
No, so maybe they do have the kind of play. His films are kind of this kind of do have this moral tale that.
Well, apparently he was kind of prudish. He had a reputation for certainly for when it came to nudity. He would very reluctantly include it in his movies if he had to. So maybe he had kind of a religious side to him that felt that there needed to be a sort of the moral compass needs to be pointing in the right direction in the movies.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know Tim Lucas on the commentary for the Arrow release of this sort of says. That Blood and Black Lace is not the depiction of women in the film is been termed as misogynistic because of the protracted violence against them before they're murdered. And it's opening a hornet's nest, isn't it, when you talk about these things? But certainly the men don't suffer any violence in this, and I'm trying to think of his other movies. Certainly something like A Bay of Blood, then the violence seems to be very even-handed between the sexes. But in this, there seem to be it's a template, really, isn't it, for Dario Argento? And he famously said, and we've said it before, I'd rather see a beautiful woman being murdered on screen than an ugly woman or a man. But it's different time. I mean, do you think they, I wonder if modern audience would find this problematic, and I know we don't really want to open up that hornet's nest on this particular movie, but there was, I've never seen any, but I know in the 1950s, 1960s, there was an underground film genre called roughies. Have you heard of those?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're kind of where you basically had sex movies, but mostly women being beaten up in the movies, and they used to call them roughies. Okay. So, and I've no desire to watch them, but it seemed to be there was a genre for that kind of violent pre-pornography, I can guess. So yeah, it's probably would take a longer show, much longer show than we've got today to delve into all of that. But yeah, it's interesting you saying about if Maria Bava was prudish, but the way these characters are treated. I know Tim Lucas sort of says that actually he says that excuses Maria Bava by saying that the film actually has more to say about fashion and about how women are treated as just simply as clothes horses by fashion, and therefore, letting Bava off the hook in that regard. But I don't know. I mean, I think the jury's out, perhaps. But having said that, it's such a playful movie, isn't it? And so
I do love the. Sorry, I was going to say one thing I meant to say was I love the opening credits on the original print of the movie, not the American.
Oh my gosh! And it's got the names like superimposed under them. I love that. It's just so colorful. It's so unique.
Well, should we talk a bit about the background of the movie? I know we're not going to go massively deep into the background, partly because there's so much been said already, and so well done on something like Arrow's Blu-ray, which is exhaustive of all of the things, and there's been so much written about Maria Bava and his movies. But one of the things that did strike me before I can ask you if you've got anything was touched on before, that Maria Bava never had big budgets for his movies, and so it always amazed me that he was able to get to shoot what he did, and all these amazing kind of panning shots were all done on the back of a child's tricycle or trolley, which is I find quite incredible. Yeah, so he didn't have a tracking dolly, he didn't have a crane or anything for the kind of high shots, and apparently it was all on a child's trolley. And the camera.
Wow! All I can say is that road services in Italy must be much smoother than Ireland, because you'd notice there'd be a lot of jitter on a child's trolley doing a dolly track in Ireland.
Well, if he was shooting over here, he'd fall into a pothole and be falling. He'd still be falling to this day.
So, do we got any other background, Joseph? Is there anything you wanted to add?
Not necessarily background, but I have a theory. I really honestly think that the killer in Blood and Black Lace definitely influenced one of the bad guys in Warren Beatty's Dick Tracy, because they dress exactly like the killer. I mean, with the white bandage over their face and everything. I mean, it looks identical. Another one I think it might have influenced, and I can't prove it, but I think you might like this, Eric, is I think Blood and Black Lace may have influenced one of the Police Academy movies. Because
which one?
Police Academy 6, City Under Siege, because the villain in that film, it's a whodunit, and the villain in that film is called the Mastermind, and obviously you don't find out who it is until the end of the film, but they are also dressed just like, to the letter, the killer from Blood and Black Lace, and they even move a lot like the killer from Blood and Black Lace. So I think one of the Police Academy denizens was inspired by Bava.
Cool. Ooh, okay, thank you. Well, Eric, how about you?
Okay, so this is from both a mixture of the commentary track, which on the Arrow Blu-ray, which is kind of exactly what is in the book All the Colors of the Dark that Tim Lucas brought out. But it was filmed under the working title of, I won't even pronounce the Italian version, but it translates into English as The Fashion House of Death. And it was filmed in Rome over a 6-week period from November 1963 to January 1964. The film's budget was low, as you're saying, $150,000 roughly. It was shown in Italy for the first time on the 14th of March 1964, and it made approximately 123 million lira, which sounds spectacular, but it converts to $77,000, which is only half of its production costs. Yes, so it was kind of forgotten about in that country, and it actually didn't see a home video release in Italy until 1999. So in West Germany, it made a degree of money, and then it sort of did some business in the States. The killer was played by a stuntman called Jeffrey Unger, or Goffredo Unger. Was his real name. Harriet White Medin is the name of the actress who plays the housekeeper, who was not impressed with the film. She said it was too violent, as Justin was saying. She later moved to the States and can be spotted in films like Death Race 2000, Schlock, and she has blink and you'll miss it cameos in The Witches of Eastwick and The Terminator. the first one, 1984. Mary Arden, who plays Peggy, almost lost an eye in the sequence where Greta finds her dead body in the boot of the car. The actress playing Greta was supposed to open the boot to fully so that it clicked. Otherwise, it was on a very strong spring and it would just spring back, which is exactly what happened. And the sharp lock of the boot was protruding about 4 or 5 inches, and it just missed the actress's eye by a bit. And apparently, she still has a scar. Well, I don't know if she's still alive, but she bore a scar from the incident for the rest of her life. Lead actor Cameron Mitchell was paid in cash that was delivered each week in a suitcase, which makes me wonder if it was a kind of a dodgy arrangement he had. Mary Arden wasn't so canny. She was to be paid once production was completed, but she never ended up seeing a cent of a payment for it. So the film performed so poorly in Italy, as we said. In America, Bava had been successfully collaborating with American International Pictures up to that point, but the relationship was soured somewhat when they heavily censored Black Sabbath. So Bava bypassed them, knowing that they'd balk at the sort of the level of violence in Blood and Black Lace. So instead he went to Allied artists, and they distributed the film with only one real change of note, which was they created a new title sequence. And they're also responsible for coming up with the film's English language title, which is Blood and Black Lace, because the original title translates as 6 victims for the assassin or something. Is it, Justin?
6 women for the assassin, I think, isn't it?
6 women for the yeah, that's it. Yeah. And that is all I bothered to write down.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, thank you, Erik. I mean, I've got a massive amount to add to that, really. Cameron Mitchell said that Bava was possibly the favourite director he ever worked with, although obviously he's forgetting his turn on things like Memorial Valley Massacre and other classics, would-be classics coming up. But I was trying to think if there's anything else you haven't covered. I mean, we mentioned about the Krimi, and this film, say you mentioned, had more success in Germany, where of course the Krimi was very, very popular, and apparently the Krimi had been in black and white up until that time. In fact, Room 13 was in black and white in 1964, as were many of the Psycho kind of rip-offs, or the films that were inspired by Psycho. But after 1964, I imagine it's probably also partly to do with that making colour film became cheaper as the 60s went on, but the Krimi became very colourful off the back of this movie, so moved into Technicolor as well. And as we mentioned, it's a film that was not successful in its own time, unlike other tentpole movies that we kind of hold up to high regard, like Psycho and Halloween and Friday the 13th, which were all juggernauts of movies at the box office on their original release, or certainly in the case of Halloween, became sleeper hits and went on to amass lots of money. Blood and Black Lace was not a hit on its release, but it was actually influenced a whole slew of directors going forward, from everyone from John Carpenter, Joe Dante to Dario Argento to, I'm sure, most of the, well, if probably not all of the Giallo filmmakers, from Umberto Lenzi onwards and all the others to come. So it's a film that which is incredibly important and still is a very entertaining watch, and still is a great movie. So if you listen to this and you haven't seen it yet, then watching it within the context of its time period and everything else, then it's still definitely worth checking out to see how it birthed the modern giallo and helped influence the slasher genre as much, arguably, as Psycho did. So Blood and Black Lace.
This is Kieran Edwards. I was a guest on Blood Rage and also Blood and Black Lace.
What? No!
Whoops. Sorry. I meant Blood and Lace. Yeah. Blood and Lace. Anywho, and you're listening to the 200th episode of The Hysteria Continues.
So, Joseph, do you want to give some, I imagine, do we have any dissenting voices from our dear listeners?
Well, the Blood and Black Lace social media score is a whopping 100%. So we got one listener of the week this week, and it's from Baron Martino. Very, very, very good name for a listener.
Yeah,
and a cat. And a cat, yes. Uh-huh. Baron Martino says, a goddamn masterpiece, gentlemen. This is the one that started it all for me. A perfect how-to for murdering lovely fashion models in a lavish setting. And that score. This film never gets old. Such an inspiration to my own personal style of murder. It is this film that birthed my obsession with burning my victims' faces against hot furnaces. Bava at his best. Bravo. And just to let Baron Martino know, I have alerted the authorities.
I'm glad to hear it. So, well, thank you for everyone.
He must be after a diary or something.
Yes, well, I imagine Eric's got a very, very racy diary.
Dear diary, Joseph looked at me today.
So
I saw Erik in the closet making babies, and then one of the babies looked at me.
Well, thank you for contacting the show, and obviously we I have some feedback here. Shall I read mine out?
Sure.
Okay, right. Well, it's hey guys, I've been listening to the show since around the Dress to Kill episode way back when, after being introduced to the show by my then and now ex-husband. This may be the only thing worthwhile to materialise from that dumpster fire of a relationship, so I guess I owe him thanks for that, ? Anyway, this is my first time writing in. Just want to congratulate you on 200 episodes, and it looks like you guys have no intentions of stopping. So, from me, and I'm sure all your listeners, thank you for an amazing 200 episodes. Sure, some movies are better than others, some shows are better than others, but no other podcast on the internet, and believe me, I listen to a lot, and I'm even comparing you to the giants of the field, has maintained such consistency. No flanderization of your individual character, no long breaks, no dramas, just hilarious, informative and heartfelt slasher movie chat. More to the point, the shows have got better as you've honed your craft. I'm sure you guys could do an episode in your sleep if you needed to, and I suspect Joseph's does half the time since he's messed a lot recently. I've recently seen as of late. No offense, Joseph, I still love you. The editing and overall sound quality has improved so much in just the last year or so, it may be the only thing that's inconsistent with what came before. But that's a great thing. I sincerely hope you guys do another 200 episodes. Also, stop making fun of Eric's jokes. He's hilarious. I've rambled on.
Thank you.
Enough. Thank you so much for the show. From Nathan Johnson, Tennessee. No, sorry, that's from Kayla Thompson Hauser.
Nathan.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you very much for the kind words.
Oh,
apart from Eric's
thank you, Kayla. Yes. I'm so sorry to hear about your doomed marriage. Give me a call.
Oh, Joseph. Oh. Well, the Lothario of...
I'm just kidding.
The Hysteria continues. So do we have any other feedback that we want to read out?
I don't.
Joseph? Eric, even?
No.
Oh, well, we've got... I'm sure we'll play it.
They really came through for our 200th, didn't they?
You love us. You really love us, don't you? Well, we do have some sound clips to play, which I know Joseph has been peppering through the show from people who've been on the show, and thank you one and all for helping make the Hysteria Continues what it is, which I think is a good thing.
Bad movies. The world is full of them. From low-budget crap fests to downright unwatchable. And only two men are willing to watch them all. So climb in and take your seat. This is Short Bus Cinema.
Let's do it.
Hey everyone, this is Johnny Krug from Kruger Nation.
And this is Rick Morgan from the Helming Power Hour.
And we have decided to team up and take you where no one has gone before.
We're on a quest to find the world's worst movie, and we're doing it on the bus.
Driving through cult classics in every genre to find the holy grail of bad movies.
So if you're looking for something different and more fun than you can stand, then climb on in.
Short Bus Cinema is a proud member of Legion Podcasts.
That's right, yo!
Short Bus Cinema. We'd love to watch the movies you hate.
Want to learn more about horror directors? With a lighthearted look at 3 of their movies? Meet fearless podcaster Gore Blimey.
I've been unsettled by bats in the past and startled by parrots, and I've even been known to jump at the odd cockatoo.
Discover horror films that are classics, and others, too.
There's a topless aerobics massacre, an exploding rock singer, cannibals, nude martial arts, a deep-fried prostitute.
But it's not all silliness. You'll get proper movie breakdowns, opinion, and background information, too.
Yep, in the 80s and 90s, Jeff Stryker was huge in gay porn. in every sense.
So if you're a horror film fan, come and check out the Trilogy of Terror podcast at strangeanddeadly.com or find it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or on your podcatcher.
One of those people that has a certain charisma and a certain style, and I'm just hoping one day he'll rub off on me.
The Trilogy of Terror podcast, where we try 3 times harder to give you the willies.
Why not? As it's the 200th episode, I need to get that trombone at the ready, because we know what it is, don't we, Erik?
Yes, we do.
It's my joke of the week. It's so great and fantastic.
So, I'm laughing already, it's so funny. Mario Bava's son is an expert animal farmer. He's not that good at delivering calves, but he can handle a lamb birth though. A lamb birth though.
I knew when you told the joke that lamb was going to be in there somewhere. I just couldn't figure it out, but bravo, I like that one.
Thank you. Justin crashed his car. He was laughing so much.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And of course...
It's better than him driving away earlier from the top 3.
Well, thank you, Erik. That must be within the top 200 of the jokes you've done so far. I'm not saying where, but okay. So
I kind of want to say that I've had a blast over these 200 episodes. It's probably been the best part of my life so far. I know that sounds sad, but I love these films and I love you guys.
Aww. The feeling is mutual.
Exactly. Well, I was going to say, actually, I'm starting up a show with Erik. It's called The Gruesome Twosome. So goodbye, Joseph. Not really. Not really.
I was telling Johnny Krug earlier that I'm just going to start a new podcast called The House of Slacks. It's about the fine art of wearing pantaloons.
Oh, I'll listen to that.
Well, they put it this way: we have no intention of the Hysteria discontinuing. See what I did there, Erik? That's a joke for you.
Very good.
So we will be. We do have plans for next year, and we still have the mysterious episode, which dare not speak its name, which will be coming at some point in the not too distant future, i.e., within the next year, hopefully sooner.
We keep promising, but we keep failing,
and we'll
get there.
Can't promise it'll be worth it, but it will be. All I can say, it will be something. So so keep tuned in for that. But we have just done today a shit show of the show wasn't shit, but the sound quality is all over the place, which adds to the lo-fi charm of our top 3 of 1982.
Top three.
Yes. And hopefully the sound quality is a little bit better on this one. We're still finding our feet after 200 episodes. And if you go back to the very, very first one, I'm not sure if you can. I know some podcasts kind of stop you listening to the very first episode.
Me, Justin, talking of Happy Birthday to Me, our first episode. If you go to our YouTube channel, it's got someone gave it a thumbs up, but 4 people gave it a thumbs down.
Did they?
Boo. Yeah. Well, they must not have liked it, or they must have thought, wow, this sounds terrible. And it really did sound terrible.
I know. Well, anything's going to be better than that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But, I cannot listen to like the first 70 or 80 episodes of this show. After that, it kind of gets a little better, but it is what it is.
It's technology, wasn't it? It's improved, and maybe we have the jokes have stayed the same. So, well, they have really, haven't they? Although,
Alan Dale,
Susie versus Toya.
I thought you meant Eric's jokes.
Well, they have.
No, my jokes are different every week.
Well, I think the kindest thing I can say about your jokes, Erik, is they've remained consistent.
They have consistently good.
Well, yes. But we will be back. So we've just done the top 3 of 1982, and of course, it won't come as a shock. We'll be doing the top 3 horror stroke slasher movies of 1983, and with those, I mean, they're actually turning into a bit of epics, really, aren't they? They're all over an hour long, those shows, aren't they?
Yes.
We have
I mean, if you're not a Patreon supporter, you're really missing out. I mean, you for as little as $1 a month, I mean, you're getting. I mean, we've got almost 50 episodes. You know, it's just $1. I mean, what are you waiting for?
Exactly. I can hear.
Would you buy that for $1?
I would buy that for $1, Erik. Now, bitches leave.
So I can hear a cat mewling somewhere. One of our cats, Francis, got stuck up a tree today, so I got mauled trying to get her down.
You and Stuart have just become scratching posts lately.
Yes. Well, we've neutered all the strays now in our little area, so all 15 have been neutered. So we won't be getting any more kittens, hopefully.
Aww.
Well, it's nice. I like kittens, but the kittens have more kittens, and it's all gets. They don't have the best life necessarily, although they all know they get good life around here. So
this is it.
Yes. So unfortunately, they tell on the cat phone. They say go around to their soft touch.
Yep.
So okay, well, well, thank you, and also I was going to say thank you to you listeners. I say without your support, we wouldn't be doing what we do. Although, to be honest, we probably would be talking the shit and shooting the shit. And we do, God knows, on Messenger, we must have written War and Peace and back in...
I think so,
in silly messages over the last 10 years.
Mostly me.
Well, no, we've all been doing it. But so one day we should crowdfund that and put it out as a book. Can you imagine that would be on the New York Times bestseller list?
Although some of it would have to be removed for legal reasons.
Yes. Yeah. Let's just hope we don't get hacked.
The next episode is technically Erik's, and it's a Christmas episode. So, Erik, what are we discussing next time?
Next time, we are going to give you our heart, and we hope that the very next day you're not going to give it away because it's Black Christmas. I know I've sung that song before, but this is the 2006 remake. And of course, we have another remake coming out in a couple of weeks, I assume.
Yeah.
But this is the 2006 version produced by Harvey Weinstein.
Ooh.
Oh, well, that shall be interesting to revisit that one. I haven't seen it for a few years. So, full of Christmas non-tidings. And what other Patreon film are we picking for this month?
Krampus.
Is Krampus for the November for the December one, isn't it?
December. Yes, December.
Gosh, God, doesn't time fly?
Krampus is all like Christmas and shit.
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
Also for the Christmas episode, I'm like 70% sure that we will have a quote unquote Erik holiday quiz again. So
just to let you know that Friday the 13th is not a holiday.
Well,
I don't get Friday the 13th off work.
Word very, very loosely, like your flapping cheeks.
Calendar-based slasher movies.
Okay, that'll work. Calendar-based slasher films. There you go. But I'm going to try to get the quiz done before we record, so I think that'll be fun.
And we have a very special guest joining us next time, is Veronica Voorhees.
Oh, shut up, you. That joke is so old, just like you.
Like us all, dear. I think we're all a bit long in the tooth, just like this podcast. So 200 episodes, gosh. Right.
I was in my 30s when this started.
Yeah.
Holy crap, so was I. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, well, I was in my 40s when we started this. So there you go. So let's hope we survive another 200 episodes. And, we're covering Black Christmas next time. So thank you for listening. And I don't know how many out there have been through all 200 episodes, but if you have, you deserve a medal. But if you joined us recently, it doesn't matter. We thank you for coming aboard and enjoying listening to us, hopefully, talk about our love of old slasher movies. So there's plenty of life left in The Hysteria Continues. So we will be catching you for Yuletide Terrors on the next episode for Black Christmas. So say goodbye to the good people.
What is Justin's favourite Giallo? Blood and Black Lace Veil, because he's a goth. I just thought of that one.
Ugh, bye.
She's